Everett Reed, also known as Nova's Eye, and our brother Nico Siegel to talk about our new project, the Eternal Boombox EP. If you were tuned in just a few minutes ago, we apologize for technical difficulties we had, but not to fear, we're all good. We had the music. The music's going to live on. The music is here and going to ground this conversation, and so we can restart and get into it again. So here's the format for the evening. We're going to have some time going through each one of the songs, talking about special moments, both sonically of the music as well as conceptually in terms of how we approach the song. We'll talk about that and be able to then go through our different feelings and impressions of each tune. And when we get to Eternal Boombox, the title track of the project, we're then going to spend some time, primarily led by Nico, working through the Pro Tool session of the song. So he'll go through and solo various sounds and talk about it and give you maybe a fuller picture of the song. So with that, we can get started with the first song on the project, I Can't See My Eyes, which is associated with the first stage of grief, shock or denial. And that is what this whole project is associated with, the 5 stages of grief. So we'll talk about that more later, but just want to put that in your ear. I Can't See My Eyes. We got the Juju Exchange. Here it is.
Yes, indeed. That was I Can't See My Eyes by the Juju Exchange off the new EP, The Eternal Boombox. And one thing I just wanted to point out real quick before we go to the next track is kind of, the thought process behind a lot of the key moments in the trumpet solo, where I'm kind of talking to myself almost, or I kind of look at the section as like multiple versions of myself, trying to look at itself, which is kind of a play on the theme of I Can't See My Eyes, where, some of these horns sound super affected, and some of them sound super far away, and some of them feel really close to you and really kind of right in front of your face. So just kind of the interplay between the different sounding tones of the horns is something I was reflecting on in I Can't See My Eyes, and kind of shows that theme. So this next tune is entitled Avalanche and features our very own Novazai on some incredible production. And so yeah, we're gonna pick his brain after we listen to the creation itself. Thank you all so much. Yes, sir. Novazai. What on earth were you thinking with that tune, man? There's so many different drum textures and sounds and feels and vibes. Man, please take me through some of these moments.
Yeah, so what's up, y'all? Obviously, that song has a lot going on, sonically and texturally as well. By texturally, I mean there's some moments that sound very almost harsh, particularly in the drums up top. That when I was making those, I was really actually, for one thing, thinking about taking the Juju Exchange to a whole new sonic landscape. You know what I'm saying? Going beyond our first record, Exchange, which had a lot of acoustic
very raw drum sounds going on, and taking us more to a drum and bass world. And then I distorted those drums. I really added a lot of distortion to kind of give it this bite to the texture. But then immediately after that, there's this more wobbly, soft texture happening that I wanted to contrast those more aggressive sounding drums in order to really process the emotion that we were investigating, if you will. Getting back to what Julian was talking about earlier about the 5 stages of grief, this song we thought to capture the stage of anger. And so a lot obviously goes into anger in terms of feeling it and channeling it and processing it, thoughtfully and mindfully. And there's a moment where there's like a lot of conviction. Right now people are on the street. There's a lot of anger that we're feeling collectively. What I'm saying, for good reason. But then there are these moments where you got to reflect on what this anger means and how to channel it righteously. What I'm saying, and not just trying to blurt it out there. So there's that moment where the song kind of gets a little soft and flows a little bit. What I'm saying, so that it's not all just like throughout the entire section, because throughout the entire song, because that's not a comprehensive understanding of how we actually healthily process anger. And then also later on in the song, there's this saxophone solo, and I think it was interesting that the way I crafted that sax solo in collaboration with our friend Irvin Pierce, we recorded a lot of takes of him just blowing over that section, playing a lot of lines. And I took a few of those lines and repeated them to kind of give this sense of familiarity and continuity throughout that saxophone solo. And then interspersed a lot of different other pieces to weave and create this feeling of like dissolving into chaos, but then coming back into that sense of familiarity and continuity. You know what I'm saying? Which really, again, gets at the idea of processing anger in a way that, it's disorienting, but then it's also like, okay, no, this is what I'm really trying to be about. This is why I'm angry. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to really process it and channel it meaningfully. You know what I'm saying? Because I really believe in what I'm angry about, right? And so the notion of making sense out of a lot of chaos and a lot of overwhelming circumstances brought us to the notion of an avalanche. If you imagine yourself being in the middle of an avalanche, tumbling and all this stuff going on around you, you're trying to grasp onto something that you can hold on to and keep you safe, you know what I'm saying, but also help you survive throughout it. I think about that a lot as it pertains to this year, 2020, and all the chaos that's been going on around us. And this song, I guess, just to keep it simple, is a way to ground yourself, ground oneself in a mindful awareness of how to process the emotions that are super real and super gripping and super alive.
Yeah, man. We talk about how the stages of grief can kind of, it's not just a checklist, right, where you get through one and then now you're done. It's kind of like, you can cycle back and cycle through things and kind of pick through how you're approaching, working through it all. And I really appreciate, the bite that you have and the kind of like abrasive nature of the first half mixed with the like delirious nature and like kind of when the bull sees red, kind of feeling of the wobbly keys, and just kind of the juxtaposition like you were talking about of the chaos versus the conviction. That was super dope, man.
Man, I love making music with these cats, in part because of something Herbie Hancock said, which is music is about life. And to really understand music, you have to understand life. And hopefully what you're seeing in our conversation is that we care as much about talking through life as we do about talking through chords, talking through time signatures, and certain musical lines that we're playing. And so this is another reason we want to have this for you. Not just to introduce the project, not just to say that, hey, here we are, not just to show you how much this music means to us, but to engage in a mirroring activity where we can talk amongst ourselves about emotions like anger, emotions like shock and denial about something that you've lost, about something that we've lost, and let that serve as a mirror for you. So as we go into this next song, which is the title track of the EP, Eternal Boombox, I encourage you to think about, where are you in life? Do you find yourself in any of these songs? Eternal Boombox is about the third stage of grief, which is bargaining, which is the what if stage or if only stage. If only something had happened differently, my life would be different. She'd still be here. Our country would still be there. He would have survived. Whoever it is, whatever it is that you've lost, that you're grieving, the if only stage is that part where you're thinking, man, if things had just gone differently, perhaps life would have sounded differently. And so with that, we take you into Eternal Boombox featuring our friends Tank and the Bangers.
At the end of my days, I hope my memories don't all fade. And if time meets me in a particular stage, I hope I'm not on the last page, reading alone. Heart has always been home, even when I've roamed. My days be a hazy afternoon, a short June, a lonely moon. So be sky for me, never goodbye for me. I hope to move on like weather do, cry and mourn too, but stay moving forward like clouds do. So be sky, and be sun, and be light, knowing that forever is never really forever, ever, and goodbye is never truly goodbye.
Yes, y'all, and it don't stop. That was the title track off our new EP, Eternal Boombox, featuring Tank and the Bangers. And a theme of this, record of grief and just kind of one of the important themes that we've been trying to talk through and talk about and reflect on is this idea of memory and just how important memory is, and how music can be healing and can, can help people remember kind of a different time in their lives or someone important to them that they lost. And this is, I think a lot of people have already kind of known about this, but in this song in particular, we're referencing it pretty plainly. If I solo these keys here, you can see what I'm talking about with this kind of evolution of this melody, So I'll play a little bit of this. Man, that part always makes me feel so deeply. Those keys are just so emotive. But then we can hear this same melody. Try and pick out all the notes of the melody if you can, and try and sing along in your head and listen to it like this. So this theme, this melody, so this theme keeps happening throughout the record or throughout this song, and different instruments are kind of playing it. I'm playing it on trumpet in a couple moments too, but I think the point that we were trying to make is kind of most cleanly shown in the piano, and just how, it's the similar, if not the same, piano part sometimes, but they're affected in these different ways. And there's things about it that you'll walk away remembering, right? And then there's things about it that are almost hazy, like they never really were even there. And I think that idea in melody is really important and really cool, because you want to tell people, the full statement, but you also want people to use their imagination and to come to their own conclusions sometimes. So Julian, where did you come up with these changes or this melody, or how did you kind of land in this place that allowed for so much exploration?
Yeah, so this song is one of my favorites that I've created with this band, and frankly just in my life. And there's a lot of layering to it for me that I'm always thinking about, and I'm excited to share some of that with you now. So one thing that I really like about this band is we look for meaning in the simple as much as we look for meaning in the complex. Charles Mingus, the great bassist, said that anybody can make something complicated, but it takes creativity to make the complex simple. And I love that about this song, where you have some bebop lines in the middle. Bebop as an art form came about in the 40s because Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Miles Davis wanted to create this really complicated music. Thelonious Monk. But the line at the beginning, boo-ba-doo-da-doo, that line just came to me simply. I just sat down and wanted to play a simple line and was playing some simple lines, and we stuck with that one. That was a special moment for us. So that's how the initial idea came, just a simple line that we found so much meaning in. Well, at the end of the track, as Nico demonstrated, you hear the line come back, but it's now come back, even as Tank says in her poetry, like a hazy afternoon, a short June. And the haze there, Tank was talking with me about this, and we were trying to figure out, how should she enter as a poet into this musical moment. We were talking about two different things that relate very distinctly to this melody. The first is, like I said at the beginning, the third stage of grief, the bargaining stage, the if-only stage. And we can ask, as we hear our country asking, and maybe as you're asking in your own life, we can ask questions about, man, if life just were different. If he wasn't elected, if she wasn't elected, if we were in a different city, if we had made different financial investments prior to COVID, so on and so forth, we wouldn't be here. Well, this stage of bargaining can happen time and again for life. just over and over. If only, what if. And so having this simple melody come back time and again, recurring, but in different forms, can symbolize the way in which we can ask that question time and again over the course of one's life, or just over the course of however long you're particularly feeling that grief. So that was the first thing we talked about. And Tank talks about this when she's saying, you know, I hope when I'm reading alone, I'm not on the last page. When my life is at the end, I hope I'm not on the page by myself reading alone. Let me move on like the weather does. And so she's gesturing towards how bargaining can be something that we move past, but yet this can be very difficult. And indeed, when you say goodbye to somebody, that's not something that's forever. Or sorry, that's not something that necessarily ends right away, but can be forever. So that's number one. Number two, though, is to talk to what Nico was saying about memory. And we know that music can really help people in last stages of life remember things from early on. So what happens in the course of this song is that you can read it as a narration of one's life, where when you're young, you may hear something, a lullaby, a piece of wisdom, a fact in school. You may have a certain disposition about you, and it's really powerful and straightforward and clear when you're young. Boo ba boo da doo ba boo doo ba. A really clear line that you hear time and again over and over. Well, it comes back in different forms, as one often has happened to one in one's life. As you get older, you hear it again, but it maybe sounds a little different. The second time you hear it, now there's trumpet. The third time you hear it, now there's flute and all kinds of things that are being added as the chorus continues to swell around you. But then you may go off, live a whole different life, ba boo ba da boo ba ba da boom boom. And now we're in a whole different stage. It's still kind of related to that initial melody, but it's somewhat of a departure. But then, sometimes, as we near the end, we can hear in the music, we can hear in friends who come to visit us, we can hear it in our spouses that have been with us for decades upon decades, whose eyes we can look into yet again. We can hear in these people around us, these cues, we can hear that melody from young. We can hear that melody from when we began. Boo ba doo da doo. But it doesn't sound the same because your memory has now shifted. And so that's something that I was trying to really play with in this song, and Tank beautifully illuminates with her words. And the story about how the song came to be named, it has to do with Nova's Eye. When we were first working on the song, for some reason I was really fixated on this idea that memory is something that can be triggered and sustained by music. And so I said vulnerably once to him in the studio, I was like, hey man, you know, if I come to a point in my life where I can't really remember much, I can't remember my own name, I can't remember my wife's name, I can't, you know, eat, please just come and play music for me. And of course, Nova's Eye being Nova's Eye said, I'll come and put a boombox, an eternal boombox in your grave. And it was just such a funny idea, and it stuck as a name. So that's where it is, Eternal Boombox. And that's where this project is, the Eternal Boombox. And we hope that these are sounds that can live on forever in your lives, in your ears, as they do for ours.
I just say one thing real quick before we get into the next track. I just wanted to note that both Nico and Julian talked about the haziness of that last portion of piano playing. And I just think about, you know, as we're talking about Alzheimer's, as we're talking about the loss of memory and whatnot, I noticed when we listened to it this time that part is still worth listening to. You know what I'm saying? It's still a beautiful piece of music. It's not dismissive. You know what I'm saying? Like, for all of us that got elders, you know, including us, that has a grandmother with dementia, her life is still beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's still worth listening to.
That's a beautiful point. And we are going to continue with the motion, but I do feel like it's worthwhile highlighting a couple more elements in this song, just because we got the session open and you guys can kind of follow along with me. And I just want to highlight some of these drums because I know it feels like this big, whooshy, beautiful tune, and it is, but there's also these really spicy moments. So I just want to highlight a couple of these percussive elements going on that might have slipped under your radar a little. So it can be the simplest melody or simplest rhythm sometimes that just feels catchy and feels like it captures the vibe. And we're just going to continue with these percussive sounds real quick. Ooh. All right, let's continue building our percussive house. Oh, yeah. Woo! Woo! Anyways, I love how we come in and out of those different tones and different grooves. And speaking of tone, this is the last thing I want to say about this tune because I'm really, really proud of this trumpet sound. So I want to play it for you all. It sounds like this. And this is what it sounds like without all the hoopla. So anyways, that's how we ended up achieving that tone. And now we're going to move right along to track number 4, entitled And So On. This tune is extremely important to me, and to all of us. But I think a big kind of question when making instrumental music is kind of how clean or how precise you should be. You know, we heard an example earlier where it was kind of the opposite that I wanted out of the trumpet than something super clean to achieve an effect, you know. And in this tune, there's a level of kind of sampling ourselves, and within the samples, there's a bunch of talking, there's doors closing, there's like all these different weird sounds that I guess most people would just consider wrong or inappropriate or, you know, not musical enough. But there's something, you know, about those different sounds that can kind of bring you into a different atmosphere and can kind of, you know, the music can transform the space that you're in. And I think, you know, there's a couple different things alluding to that and so on, you know, this idea of leaving something to the imagination, and also your imagination itself being put to the test with all these extra sounds kind of putting you in these different scenes almost. So like the cello, sometimes being kind of out of tune and almost reaching that note, but not quite. You know, there's something beautiful in the kind of human nature of making music, where not every single thing we make is going to sound like a robot. Not every single thing we make is going to sound like there's no mistakes in it, because at the end of the day, we're human and we make mistakes. And, you know, sometimes there's trumpet parts with flubs in it, or there's, you know, drum parts with clicking of the sticks. And it's like, there's many different ways of looking at that. You know, you can try and suppress all those things, or you can kind of own up to it and own up to your own humanity. And I think that's really what we're doing on this song, is kind of just showing people, hey, this is something that feels good. It feels like it transports you. It feels like, you know, it accomplishes that goal for us of transforming a space and transporting you to kind of the headspace we were in and the emotional space we were in when we were making this. And there's all these mistakes musically along the way that can almost, you know, that kind of allow for the rest of that allow the listener to truly, you know, imagine with us, to join in our creative process, and to kind of leave something to the listener to think about, and leave something to walk away with. So we made that
no
tune.
No mistakes, just happy accidents.
That's right.
Bob Ross.
That's right. As Ambrose put it, without mistakes, there'd be no discovery. And I think that speaks volumes on this tune.
Nico, to that point, can you help the listeners understand what the terms muted and reverb mean? There's been some questions about that.
Yes, of course. Let me go to my favorite version, which is a trumpet sound, to show you this phenomenon. So here's a trumpet take. Here's what it sounds like without anything on it. This is just a trumpet sound. That's what I sound like when I play the trumpet. Okay, now this is the first effect we added to it to kind of make it fuller and sound like there's a bunch of more me's. Right, and there's some pitch things happening. Just kind of fill up the section a little. And then here's the next part of it. So this is reverb, and reverb is a pretty common effect to use on lots of different instruments. But what it does, basically, what you just heard, is if you think about sound as kind of like a room, you can imagine the dry trumpet being right in front of your face, and the reverb trumpet being a little bit farther away, or kind of, you know, to the left a little, or the right a little bit farther back, and just kind of thinking about the space that you're hearing as more of like a 3D situation, you know, above and below, and all this depth of sound that you're hearing. So not everything is just right in front of your face, kind of. And then this delay is the final one, and what delay does is kind of just bounce things around the walls. So here's with delay. So anyways, it's achieving, you know, kind of this ping-pongy effect, and maybe, you know, it makes you think of something bouncing off a bunch of mountains in the canyons or something, or when when you're all alone in some open area and you go, hello, 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 hello. So delay is just literally replicating this little piece of audio and just duplicating it a bunch of times after it. And so that's what it sounds like, all three together, and those are some different effects that we use to achieve depth in sound.
This song was entitled And So On, and So On was given to the fourth stage of grief, which is depression. After you've gone through the what if stage and the anger and the initial shock, you can fall into depression. And that can be an ongoing thing of just and so on and so on and so on. In this song, there's not one simple melody. It weaves in and out as if you're in a maze. And if you've been depressed, I haven't been, but I've heard for those from some who have been depressed, that it can just feel like you're on a Groundhog Day, where every day it's just hard to get out of bed, it's hard to find meaning in life, and you can be on a maze. So we wrote this song, or entitled this song this way, as an offering to those who may feel like you're on that maze, that you're just and so on and so on and so on. If your life is an and so on, we hope that you can find some solace and some comfort in depression. In this song about depression. And know that you're not alone, and know that it's okay to be on the journey. And we create this music to help accompany you in that. So that was And So On, the fourth song of the Eternal Boombox EP. Now after the fourth stage, you come into the fifth of the cycle, and that is the stage called acceptance or hope. And as such, we entitled this last selection on our EP, Glimmer.
Yeah, that was Glimmer off of the Eternal Boombox EP by the Juju Exchange. And that tune, man, there's so many different sections that I love about that song. But to continue with the theme of this glimmer of hope, I thought it was especially cool how various elements at different points in the song almost kind of emerge out of nothing. There's all these different transitions within this song that something beautiful happens seemingly out of nowhere. And I think, like, specifically the saxophones at the end, which blend perfectly into our friend Akenya's vocals, which then blends perfectly into these storm sounds, and it's just all these kind of moments of reveal. There's always these different reveals, and I think, you know, Hope can definitely look that way, where there's kind of, you know, it can kind of reveal itself out of absolutely nothing, in the last place that you would expect, and it can also very much is a segue right into the next phase of your life. So you have these things, these ailments, these parts of your life that are giving you trouble, and then this glimmer of hope emerges out of absolutely nowhere, out of the darkest place, and finally can show you some light. So anyways, this tune always makes me feel a whole lot. And I'm especially grateful to the Juju Exchange project in general for just creating music that is that we really have to think about and really have to feel and really have to talk through to be able to kind of get on the same page and to kind of, you know, show why are we even making music in general, you know, especially during this crazy time that we're living in. Where is music and art's place in kind of bringing people together and showing people how to listen to each other, how to care for each other. So anyways, this tune is super important to me.
This song has this amazing moment halfway through where Nico's horns come in for the first time on the second section. You can kind of think of the song as having 3 sections. First part is really grounded in that bass, doom 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 doo 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 doo, which repeats. And the second part is doom doom ba doom boom ba doom boom ba doom boom ba doom doo ba doom boom ba doom boom ba doom boom doom doom ba doom doom ba doom. We could have taken that beat in all kinds of directions. One thing that happens halfway through this second part is where Nico's horns come in. And I love this moment because it was just a really powerful moment, I think, of actually connecting with him, with me as a composer, and he as a trumpeter. For the longest time, we were trying to figure out this section. Talk about needing hope. We were trying to figure out the melody and where is this going and what sits right. And it takes us a very long time to select and remain with that selection on what the sound is. So I decided at some point to go home. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and on my keyboard start writing out trumpet lines in a piano sound. It just seemed kind of weird, but I was like, well, I mean, nothing else has seemed to work, so maybe this will. And I wrote those out, and I'll never forget, I brought them to Chicago, played them for Nico, and he was into them, which was just a really powerful moment. It was one of my proudest moments as a composer to date, because I was really into that sound, really cared about those chords and that progression, but didn't know if he was going to like it. And when he listened and liked them, he started recording them. But the cool thing is, there was one track, for whatever reason, I forgot to play for him twice. So I played him first, and then he was listening and started recording. And then he listened and was like, wait, isn't there another one? And I was like, maybe. And I soloed through and found that one. He's like, yeah, I want to record that one too. It's just a really powerful moment that I won't forget, just about how collaboration can happen in the composition process. Because when he listened to what I had created on a keyboard, he wanted it and wanted to play it all. And I think that when that comes across in the ba-da-doo-doo, ba-doo-doo-doo, mixed then with my sister, our sister, Rebecca Reed, with beautiful glissandos on harp, it just reminds me of so much, brings so much to mind, not only this connection, but also the connection with my wife. For some reason, that section is just so lush, so rich, so deep, that it just always brings me to thinking about her. And so I'm curious, you know, you can put this in the chat, talk to us offline afterwards, DM us, email us, however you want to get in touch with us. I'm curious, are there moments on this project that make you think about one person or one event? Maybe an event where you saw an exchange with somebody, who you were trying to grow closer to. I was growing closer to Nico as I composed for him. Maybe there's somebody in your life that you have grown closer to, and maybe there's a moment in this music that triggers that for you. If that's you, we love to hear. We love to be a part, because this is why we create, to mark where we are in time, to give an impression of a certain place in humanity's history, and to then also inspire conversation and dialogue for what's to come. So if that's you, if that's several of y'all, we'd love to hear from you, either here via this live room chat, and we can, again, talk to you offline about it, or feel free to join us over at Patreon. We just started a Patreon, which is a subscription service where people can come and join the exchange in a different way. We can have back and forths and have Zoom calls together and have just a different kind of relationship where you're able to support us, and we can indeed support each other as we create music together as independent artists seeking to pursue a justice, a kind of righteousness in music that Patreon enables. So if you would like to continue the conversation after tonight, please feel free to talk with us one-on-one or join us in that community over at Patreon. And we just want to say thank you so much. And that's all I have, but we'll give the last word to Nova's Eye.
Dang, that's so much pressure for my last word. There's a question in the chat, what's the hardest part of composing? And that I just wanted to address real quick. I think one of the challenges that we have is having so many ideas and creating limitations with those ideas. You know what I'm saying? Like, with obviously there's a lot of sections that are happening throughout all this music. You know, all these songs are really like 7 different songs in one. You know what I'm saying? And there are a lot of sections that we actually had to omit. There's a part in Eternal Boombox where there's this groove under that last piano section that I really loved, but for the greater purpose of the song, we had to cut it out. You know what I'm saying? Just because with too much, there's too many directions to go down. You know what I'm saying? And it can get disorienting in a bad way, and also just confusing how to make meaning out of what's actually there. You know what I'm saying? And how to tell a true and compelling story, cohesive story, with the beginning, middle, and end. Right, not with the beginning, middle, and you know, like there needs to be some kind of concise definition. So I think one of our challenges and one of the things that make this music so beautiful and a beautiful challenge is to create limitations out of a lot of beautiful information. You know what I'm saying, and to sacrifice where necessary. So I guess that concludes our time together. Feel free to hit us up in social media, like Julian just said, and thank you so much for being here. This is a really deep moment in our life as a band, coming out with this music. I've been playing it on repeat. Honestly, it's obviously our own music that we spent a lot of time on, but the fact that it's out in the world right now is so significant, and we're extremely teed to share with you, and that you're even here watching this live. This is a really special moment, and we definitely feel y'all presence virtually in this space, and we hope to see you again. We hope to grow this whole journey with you. Join us on Patreon, like Julian said, yada yada yada. Big love and thank you.
Thanks, everybody.